call from a lady in 2015. She mentioned that she knew an auto rickshaw driver who was badly involved in an accident. He was practically bedridden, and he was sinking into depression. Is there something you could do for him, she asked. Now, we were a bunch of people in Hyderabad, India, listening to this story. Upon some brainstorming later, we realized that if we could make him mobile, maybe, just maybe, we could move the needle a wee bit on Narsimlu, the auto rickshaw driver's life. So some phone calls later and some pooled-in money later, a brand new wheelchair made its way to Narsimlu's home. His wife, Pushpa, wept with joy when she learned of the reason of our arrival. "You've given a new lease of life to us, madam," she said haltingly in Telugu. Today, in 2017, Narsimlu runs a tea stall and a biscuit stall seated on that very same wheelchair that we bought for him. And do you know the cost of that wheelchair? It was a measly 5,000 rupees, or around $77. I mean, that's an amount that some of us would spend at restaurants a few times when we go out with friends. Good afternoon. My name is Archana Suresh, and I'm founder, talker, and doer of a charitable trust called Bring a Smile. So what is Bring a Smile? For that, I'll have to tell you another story. So a few years ago in 2012, my mom was rummaging through our cupboard. And in between clothes and books and board games, the joke is that she forgot what she was looking for. And that's when she picked up the phone and called me. Now here I was, wiping the bottom of my 1-year-old daughter. And being charitable was the last thing on my mind. So in that casual conversation, my mom asked, "Do you think you can be a bridge between people who have a ton of items in their homes," which I'm sure we all do, "and between people who live in thatched huts, who can barely manage 3 square meals a day?" At that point, I didn't pay too much attention to the conversation. But now, looking back, I think my mom did sow a seed somewhere in my head. So I was on a maternity break. This was October 2012. I had a little time at my disposal, so I ventured to ask some residents in my apartment community. I'm sure all of us live in apartments, really, most of us at least. I asked them, "You think we can do something like this?" And guess what? I did get help. So that is how Bring a Smile started, really. And I'm going to take you through some milestones of our journey. Just to continue from that story, a friend of mine offered to write content for a pamphlet. Another friend said we would print 1,000 of them. He would print 1,000 of them. And even the newspaper vendor said, "Madam, agar aap charity ke liye kar rahe hain, if you're doing this for charity, I will distribute these pamphlets free to the 650 apartments." And like I said, Bring a Smile started right then. So these milestones, I'm sure, will resonate with some of you. The first point I want to make is, if you want to help someone, start somewhere, but just start. So we had this collection drive where we wanted apartments to come and donate items. And it was a resounding success. 40 apartments came forward, donated clothes, toys, books, footwear, kitchen utensils, prams, and somebody even donated a television. So this was used stuff, but it was usable again. So these items came in, and then we had to decide on, we had to transport these items, because the plans were forming in my head, and we didn't have cars. So again, we went into a huddle, said, "Kisi ke paas gaadi hai? Does somebody have a car? Can we send these items somewhere?" So 3-4 volunteers came forward. We bundled these items in these cars, and then the next question was, where would we go with these items? So first, someone said, "Let's go to an orphanage or a senior citizens home." That's how it all starts. Anybody who wants to do charity first heads to an anath ashram, an orphanage, or a senior citizens home. But what happens there is that in these places, the space is limited. So dropping off excess items only adds to the clutter there. So we said we'll go to slums or a space outside government hospitals. So I don't know if some of you all have been to a government hospital. The people who go there for the medical treatment of their loved ones are people who go there with practically just one set of clothes on their backs. We went to this government hospital in Hyderabad, started distributing these items, and pandemonium broke out. Word got around that, there are items that are being distributed for free. So, long story short, at the end of it all, some team members and I had claw marks on our arms, These were people, with dry specks of blood. Because people would dig into our arms to get a sari or, a trouser or some baby clothes. So such is the need in this country, my friends. You and I would probably set aside a piece of clothing or a pair of footwear because it's worn out, it's old. But to the man on the street, that means so much. So, coming to a quality that my mom taught me, it is important to practice empathy. And like I said, my story takes a bit of a twist here because my mom introduced me to this concept, and in December 2012, she was diagnosed with third-stage breast cancer. So the news, shattered us because, you hear of cancer afflicting other people. You never really think it'll hit you. So between her chemotherapy sessions and my work and managing my daughter, my husband and I saw 2013 go by in a blur. In 2014, my mom's health began to plummet. Nothing we were doing seemed to be working. We saw her sinking, and it was one of the worst periods of my life. And on 3rd June 2014, I lost my mom. I cremated her. And her death had such a shattering effect on me. It just pushed me into an abyss of grief. There was just no let up to my sorrow. It felt like I was hurtling down a long, dark tunnel with no end in sight and no speck of light. So I would go through the motions, go to work, finish work. I would come home and I would cry myself to sleep. This went on for months. And the grief was so much. Just to numb it, I said, I will just plunge myself into Bring a Smile. So I turned into a machine who wanted to just help people because I knew what it felt like to have no hope. So, they say that when you do for others, your own troubles seem much smaller. And that's exactly what happened. So the point I'm trying to make is you must try to do for others because it's extremely fulfilling. 2014, we began collecting items, distributing items. We would just keep going. And what I also did simultaneously was I would write about it and post it on social media. In this particular case, on Facebook. All of us have Facebook accounts, I'm sure. So, I would write about it, and this was just my way of keeping track of what we were doing. And before we knew it, we had reached out to 6,500 underprivileged people. So that was an astounding figure for someone who just wanted to start with just 2 people, 3 people, that's it. I never had lofty goals. I just said, kuch na kuch karna hai, logon ke liye karna hai. I want to just do a little bit, that's it. So it went on like that. WhatsApp was prevalent in Hyderabad around then, 2014, 2015. That took off. So I created a WhatsApp group, began adding like-minded people to it. The numbers grew there. 10 members, 20, 40, 100. We're at 200 plus members there. And the local media in Hyderabad sniffed us out for some reason. And their coverage also added a little to increasing awareness on the cause. So the point I'm trying to make is that you have to leverage social media and technology because in this day and age, this is the future, right? So if you want to do for someone, and this is a great way to sort of just let people know because a lot of people will want to do something similar, and create a platform for do-gooders, if I may use the word. So people began reading about us online, and there were a bunch of people who lived outside Hyderabad who wrote to me saying, look, we can't be with you when you're distributing items, but at least let us help you financially. So that was actually one of those one of those points where I was a little hesitant, because you know how it is. Asking money for charity is one of the easiest things you can do. So I had my reservations, but then again I went into a huddle with my team members, and we felt that if we build financial muscle a bit, we could do more. So, you know, opened a bank account in the name of a Bring a Smile member. Money began coming in. And what I would do very regularly was that I would, every time we spent from that bank account, I would write about it to the donors with bills, with photos and a write-up. So I would close loop with donors, because it is about building accountability, it is about building trust. So, you know, every time we did that, there were, the money that we were getting grew, because they were getting periodic emails from us. So there was this one time when we raised 3,30,000 or around 5,000 US dollars in less than 1 week. So it was amazing, really, to just see the support that people were giving us, and one thing led to another. And I think this is important for all of us, that if you build accountability with whatever you're doing, trust seeps in, and then it just leads to something bigger. So that happened, and you know, a lot of people sometimes ask me, who comprises Bring a Smile? And my answer to that is, Bring a Smile is just made up of people like you and me. People who are working professionals, homemakers, students, college students, retired people, you know, anybody who wants to make a small difference, really. And I personally have been very fortunate, because some of the people I've met through Bring a Smile have been fabulous human beings, really. You know, there are people in my team who've driven us from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. in the morning, just so that we could put a blanket over a homeless person. We distributed 2,300 blankets in 2015 and 2016. So these people, the team really that I'm talking about, are people who put others' needs before theirs. And I think it's a fabulous quality to have, really. You know, I mean, there were these two team members in my team who coughed up 70,000 rupees or 1,000 US dollars within 24 hours. I mean, can you believe it? I mean, it was, I mean, when I heard this, I fell off my chair. I said, are you serious? Do you want to do this? Because there was a stranger lady in Kakinada, Andhra Pradesh, who had a rare medical lung condition, and they wanted to buy her injections and send it to her, and one of them did that. The other one was just going to transfer money into the account. So the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, these are people who have donated school bags, school books, fees, for kids they haven't even met, because they just want to try and make a difference. And the other thing that Bring a Smile is also about is about creating, of course, take people along, because people help people, that's a given. I mean, if I'm standing here today in front of you, it's because of those fantastic people behind me. Can we have a round of applause for my team, please? Because they've been outstanding. The other thing that I take cognizance of is the fact that Bring a Smile has also tried to create an ecosystem of support. So while we continue with our core activities, what we also do is we try and be a conduit for other causes. Like, for instance, I don't know if some of you have heard of a Robin Hood Army. They feed the hungry. There is a Vata Foundation. They preserve the environment. There is a Blue Cross. They help in, you know, they're working towards animal welfare. So it is important to create a ripple of action and leverage people's expertise in their area of interest. So for instance, you might have friends, you know, a doctor, for instance, lots of doctors here, so it's the right forum. A doctor, for instance, may not be able to, you know, come along and distribute items, but that same doctor will be able to conduct a medical camp somewhere. Or, for instance, a teacher may not donate monetarily, but the teacher will be able to teach, you know, students from a government school. So it is important to create that ripple of action and be a conduit. And finally, a point that is close to my heart, because again, my mom used to, you know, always speak about this particular quality. It's about developing an attitude of gratitude. I think at heart, Bring a Smile is a bunch of grateful people who are just glad that there are takers to the call to action. Now, it could be just somebody sharing a status update on Facebook. It could just be someone who's giving us 1 hour of their time. But I think it's great that people want to action the intent, and that needs to be encouraged in today's world. You know, people who want to try and do something, whatever it may be. And, I mean, it's also about perspective, right? You walk into a slum and you realize what a privileged life you lead. Here people are living in thatched huts with just in one room with basic necessities. And I don't know, I feel really passionate about the fact that, it is important to show your gratitude to the maker, to, that higher power, because we are all very, very fortunate people. And I think Bring a Smile also wants to try and help people find their purpose, because it is important to sort of, lift people along as you go along. So, I mean, I urge all of you to try your own way of bringing a smile. It could be, you could begin by just packing the leftovers of your food at a restaurant and giving it to someone who's who's homeless, who could do with it. Or it could be by, partially at least sponsoring the funding of your maidservant's child or your driver's child. If all this seems too complex, just start and maybe stop just stop others from throwing banana peels and toffee wrappers outside moving cars. You just might be making the country smile. So the point I'm trying to make is you don't have to have grand plans, lots of money. Hum log wait karenge till we have like a 3-bedroom flat. Sorry, doesn't work like that. You just have to take that first step. And it's like that story of the boy and the starfish. So there was this one time where this man was walking on a seashore that was littered with starfish because there was a storm the previous night. And he noticed a boy in the distance who was picking up an object and throwing it into the sea. So he went a little closer and he said, "What are you doing?" And the boy said, "If I don't throw these starfish into the sea, when the sun comes up high, these starfish will die." So the man said, "But this is impossible. There are thousands and thousands of starfish on this beach. I'm afraid you're not going to make much of a difference." The boy smiled, picked up another starfish, threw it as far as he could into the ocean, and said, "It made a difference to that one." Thank you, and God bless.